Before you read anything, so just some basic information. The obligation, don't read, listen up. The obligation to eat matzah is in the Torah. You have to eat matzah on the Seder night. The drinking of the 4 cups of wine was mandated by the sages. Why do we have 3 matzahs on our Seder plate? The basic reason is as follows. Every Shabbos and Yom Tov, this is by rabbinic enactment, we make a blessing over 2 breads. Pesach is no different. So when you make your blessing over your matzah, you have to have 2 whole breads, or 2 matzahs. Since we break one early in the Seder, before we make the blessing, very early on, because you want to tell the story of Passover over a broken matzah, for several considerations. But the fact is, we're going to break one and put half away for later, for the Afrikoyim. In order to end with 2 whole matzahs, you have to start with 3. That's the basic reason why there are 3 matzahs. There are many, many other reasons. That's the most basic reason. Finished. Now, why do we have 4 cups of wine? Why did the sages enact that? It's nowhere in the Torah itself. So the answer that's given, one of the most famous answer of all, given in the Jerusalem Talmud, which is a very primary rabbinic work, very early, even precedes the Babylonian Talmud. So the Jerusalem Talmud says, for the reasons they're looking at you on the page in front of you, because the sages wanted that everybody should be cognizant of 4 expressions of redemption that are found in Parshas Va'era. It's right there in front of you, underlined. God instructs Moishe Rabbeinu to tell the Jews that they shall be redeemed, and you see the 4 expressions. Vitzalti, I will save you. I'm sorry, first one, Vaitzesi, I will take you out. Vitzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti eschem bila'am, I'll take you unto me as a people. So because the sages wanted us to remember the 4 expressions, so they enacted, we drink 4 cups of wine. In order to provoke the question, why are you drinking 4 cups of wine? And the answer would be, we want to remember this. That's the most elementary answer as to why there are 4 cups of wine. There's 1 cup of wine that goes without saying. Why is that?
Because we make a bracha over one.
Kiddush. That's another enactment of the sages. It's nothing to do with Pesach. It's Shabbos, Yom Tov, nothing to do with Pesach in particular. But they added another 3, making 4, in order that we be aware of on this night the 4 cups of wine. So 2 questions, please remember them. Number 1, why are these expressions so important? It's so important that they have to have 4 cups of wine. There are many of expressions of redemption obviously found in the book of Exodus. Why any expressions, mind you? Why any? Of course, who's forgetting? We sit at the Seder. That's why we're here. We have to remember certain words. What for? And why these words? That's really 2 questions. But you have to remember any words in particular, and why these? What is it adding? It's not like we have to be reminded why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to celebrate God took us out. It's enough. You have to know the 4 expressions and these 4 expressions. Great, that's 2 questions. Third question.
A question also about there being slightly redundant in a way.
Yeah.
I will bring you out from the burdens, and I will deliver you from their bondage.
Okay, you can add that too.
It's not such a.
It's not like it is
such a big difference.
We're not getting 4 different insights here. It's one thing. So it seems rather innocuous. But the main question is not that. The main problem with this answer, which answer? Which answer? This reason for the 4 cups of wine.
Do you remember the word that you were with
The Jerusalem Talmud's answer, the main problem with that answer is the following. And this is a question that is raised by a very early commentator called Mordechai. He says that if that's the whole objective, what's the whole objective? To remember this, then that would be achieved very simply by the sages saying, okay, add 1 more matzah and have 4 matzahs at the Seder plate. And that will answer, why is there 4? The 4 expressions. What justified them going this whole drastic and dramatic new a new enactment of introducing a whole novel thing of 4 cups of wine when the end goal is achieved with far less. And in Torah, there's no such thing as 2 steps if you can do it in 1 step. There's no drama in Torah. Everything is precise. Nothing superfluous and nothing extraneous or extra. So that's his question. What's his question in summary? It's a very strong question, and that is,
why not use 4 matzahs?
if this is the whole point, then you don't need 4 cups of wine. With extra blessings, a whole new thing. Just say 1 more matzah, and that will satisfy that. You have everything you need there. You'll have 2 at the end, and you'll have 4 to remind you of the 4 expressions. So therefore he says, I don't understand the Jerusalem Talmud. And he says, I don't understand that answer. I'll give another answer. That's not the reason. It's not this. Forget it. He gives another answer, which is actually not his, but it's found also in the early works of the Midrash. And he says, it's not these 4 expressions, it's something else. There are other 4 expressions in the scripture which talk about God's cup of salvation. 4 such expressions. One of them we say when? Every week. We actually quote one of them. Last night in the Havdalah. Kos Yeshuot Esa. It's one of 4 cup of salvation I will lift up. And there's another 3. Now tonight's about what? The Seder is about what? God saving us. The sages wanted us to remember those 4 expressions of cups of salvation. How does that answer the question? Well, obviously they had to enact cups because they wanted to remember not this but that. And those verses talk about what? Cups of salvation. So it makes sense that they enacted 4 cups of salvation.
There's 4 expressions of cups of salvation?
Yeah, throughout the entire Tanakh, only 4. There's also 4 expressions of cups of poison that God will give the nations of the world for oppressing the Jews over the millennia. It's all metaphoric. But the point is, so now you tell me the Mordechai's question and the Mordechai's answer. Mordechai. What was the Mordechai's question? Mordechai Dov.
He doesn't buy the whole thing about 4 cups. If you want to express the fact of saving the Jews, you could just add another matzah. So he doesn't buy the answer that
He doesn't understand the Jerusalem Talmud's answer, and instead, what does he say? He gives an entirely different explanation that does make sense. And what's that?
That you'll find 4 cups of salvation in Tanakh that you can use. That's what they were.
That's what the sages wanted us to remember for the obvious reason tonight we're being saved. And so therefore the only way to remember those expressions, the appropriate way to remember them is with what?
4 cups of wine.
Because those expressions
Are the cups of salvation?
talk about cups of salvation. So that's his answer. Which is
those
very
cups of salvation are not related to this story.
Pesach? No, they're just in general. In general, future redemption actually, and Pesach is part of the process that leads to the future redemption. That's his answer, which is all very well and good for the Mordechai, but what about the Yerushalmi? We have to understand, he asked a good question, we have to answer it. So let's go back to the question that he asked and the ones that we asked. The question he asked is, how does this justify 4 cups of wine? And we asked before that a more general question. Our general question at the outset of the class this morning was,
Why don't we add another matzah?
why? No, even more general question on the Yerushalmi. On the Yerushalmi's answer, why are these expressions so important? Period, altogether. And however, just why? It's another question on the Jerusalem Talmud. Why are these expressions so important? Why are the sages fixated on them?
They all seem to be very similar.
He made that point. They all seem to be very similar. Michael pointed that out, right? Good. So that was a part of our question. No, you're repeating what he said. That's a part of. Thank you. It's a part of our question. So the answer is, who remembers from, was it last year, the year before? Okay, we'll begin our answer. The answer is as follows, continuing our theme actually from last week. Okay, I'll ask some questions, you'll answer them. And this is a review of last week and the previous week. So what was the reason for the hasty exodus? What's our question on the hasty exodus? I'll turn this question in time.
If they didn't leave on time, then the 50, they would have fallen to the 50.
Okay, yeah, you're good. You're going out to the answer. We're getting to the end. We're just going to build our case slowly.
Oh, okay.
The basic question on the story of the Exodus that a child would ask. What's the question? Why did they leave in...
What's the rush?
What's the rush?
Yeah.
The answer is, Yankel is pointing out, the reason is not because of the Egyptians, because of the Jews. They had to leave. Or those that had agreed to go would have...
Went into the 50th.
They got 50th level and disappeared. So what does this mean? What happened at the moment of the Exodus, what we're celebrating on Pesach, is God coming down and taking us out of Egypt. We didn't leave, certainly not willingly. We just left with the barest modicum of faith. It was okay. We allowed ourselves to be led. 5 minutes later or an hour later, very likely, most would have said, we're not going. So the celebration, that's what had to be quick. The Exodus, for us, get them out now, before it's too late. A, and B, what was the state of the Jewish people in being, at that moment, were we inspired, excited, wanting to go out? No. We're just a core, okay, essence, dry. We were metaphorically dry and tasteless. Taste meaning, symbolically, reason, emotion, feeling, none of that. So matzah is the perfect symbol for not only the hasty exodus, because matzah is made quickly, but the fact that matzah has to be eaten, and the components of matzah are what? The simplest of foods. Flour and water. It's forbidden to embellish the matzah. We don't even dip it in salt. Seder night. Pure matzah. Pure, plain, tasteless. Well, it has its unique taste, but it's not embellished. It's as simple as it could be. Matzah. You tell me now. So the tastelessness of the matzah represents what?
The spirituality.
The spiritual state of the Jew. So it's called poor man's bread, but we don't just mean poor in the literal sense. We mean spiritually impoverished. Lack of intellect, feeling, understanding, investure. Matzah, therefore, is the symbol of the Exodus. Now, leave that on the table, and another piece of important information, and that is that, and you can help me here too, the purpose of the Exodus is what? Just to leave Egypt, and that was it? What was the purpose of it all?
Get into Israel.
Spiritually elevate the Jews.
Yeah, but you're saying it's all true, so what's the component that makes all this happen?
Giving of the Torah.
Giving of the Torah. The two holidays are really one. As we well know, it's connected by a 49-day count. It's really, in essence, one journey. And the journey is freedom. But true freedom is not to do what I want to do. If I do what I want to do, I end up in jail.
I'll come visit.
You come visit. And it's in places where there's capital punishment, it may be too late. Because if I do what I want to do, yeah, human being is allowed to do what he wants to do. That's why there's government and rules and society, etc. So true freedom is not doing what I want to do. True freedom really is expressing the depth of who I am. Now, there's many layers to me. There's very ugly layers. That's not the real me. And allow that freedom, we call it the evil inclination or the animal soul, we will abuse and use and do terrible things to our fellow human beings, which is what people do. But true freedom is to reveal the depth of who we are, and that's our godly soul. That's the true me. And what unlocks the depth in me? That's what Torah is all about. That's why God gave it. He gave us a Torah, mitzvah by mitzvah, not to become anything, as we always point out, but rather to express the depth of who we are. And that's true freedom. Is the liberation of the self, the real self. Torah guides us to get to the real self. Now to tame the animal and allow the true self expression. which is really godly and good. That's a lifelong work. Each one achieves that to his or her degree. But that's the objective. So going out of Egypt, the freedom is step one. Here we're going to the giving of the Torah, and that's the real freedom, which is work, and so on. The net result is a fully expressed soul in the body here in this world. A realized person, an enlightened person, if you like. So the sages wanted like this. Tonight is the Exodus. What happened exclusively tonight was God took us out, and that's it. But we have to remember that this is only the beginning of the process. It's not enough to celebrate, I'm Jewish, as we learned last week. That's what happens on Pesach. God guarantees our Jewishness no matter what we do. That's not enough, said the sages. It's the foundation. But then you have to realize, what am I doing with my Jewishness? Am I going to liberate it or suppress it? Ignore it or live it? So they want us tonight already to be aware of where this is going. This is going to the giving of the Torah. This is not the end of the story. Now the Torah mandates the eating of matzah because the Torah mandates the celebration of what? Well, what happened today? What happened today is the Exodus. I just told you, we all share this, matzah is the symbol of where the Jew is at and what happened. That's the symbol in Scripture. But the sages, their job is to pardon?
Show us where we're going.
Show us where we're going. We'll get into more detail about that. Pardon? Elaborate. And so therefore they say, yes, but remember where this is all going and be aware of responsibility and the work that's required on our behalf to achieve true freedom. God starts the process, as we learned last week, right? We need to complete it. And so therefore they wanted us to be aware of the giving of the Torah. That's really the point. Now these four expressions are just that. Because, look at them on your page now, the fourth one, I will take you to me as a people, that's referring to the giving of the Torah. Interestingly enough, the term I will take you, v'lakachti, is the very same term Torah uses to describe a man marrying a woman.
Sorry.
We hope it's not an emergency.
No, I'm sure it's not.
Okay. So the very expression of a man marrying a woman in Torah elsewhere, the book of Deuteronomy, is ki yikach ish isha. Now we all know that marriage, can you marry someone against their will? Not in Jewish law. The Quran, not the Torah. So marriage is a relationship where the two parties are there because they want to mutual consent. They love or they're committed to love each other. It's about the meeting of two hearts. So the sages wanted us to be aware that tonight it's starting a process which will culminate with the giving of the Torah, which has to be your investment, your desire. That's the liberation of the self, when we're expressing our soul in our mind, in our heart, engaging mind and heart, etc. Now the symbol for that is wine. Matzah is not the symbol for a desireful relationship. Matzah is a symbol for the opposite, of whether you're just being led, whisked out, born. You're whisked out of the womb. When the time comes, you're taken out of there as soon as possible. To stay there too long, physically, God forbid. So when the moment of birth comes, and actually the prophet Ezekiel and our sages describe the Exodus as a birth. And the birth pangs is the whole slavery. It's a great symbolism here. But when the moment of birth comes, it's got to be very quick. And the child, the embryo now becoming the newborn child, plays no role in this other than being allowed to come out. Left unto its own device, God forbid, the child won't come out. So that's exactly what happened to the Exodus. God is taking us all out, and the symbol is matzah. But the sages want us to know, this is stage one. Stage two is your investment, your maturation, your growth, your marriage. Symbol can't be matzah, and the perfect symbol is wine. Because wine is everything matzah is not. If matzah is made in great haste, what makes a good wine? Age. If matzah is tasteless, what makes a good wine?
Flavor.
Flavor.
Don't like wine.
People pay a fortune for aged wine and nuanced wine, and the longer it steeps, etc., etc. It's all about texture and flavor. Moreover, the most obvious difference: you drink wine, what happens? It moves you emotionally. It elicits a response. It's all about not just a passive, but an engagement, being moved and engaged. Marriage. That's why the marriage under the chuppah is a cup of wine. So, the sages, now we're answering your question. What was so important about these expressions? You tell me. You just answered it.
All the stages that we go through from the quick, like being born, quick removal. Otherwise, there's problems.
So it's simple language. What did the sages want us tonight to be acutely aware of?
Our birth is a nation, in reality.
That's a process of growth.
It's a process of
Beginning
growth.
of a process.
It's a process of growth that starts tonight that will culminate in what? I'm asking, why these four expressions? Answer the four expressions now.
Accommodate
Our marriage,
in a union,
the Jewish
our marriage
people's
with
marriage,
God,
our marriage.
Yes, thank you very much. The four expressions, what it's got to do with the four expressions? We're all trying to explain the Jerusalem Talmud and the 4 cups of wine.
It's from taking.
I'd like to say it's 4 stages, but I don't see how.
We'll get that in a minute, but just what I've just told you, because
Taking.
the fourth expression, taking v'lakachti, and I'll take you to me as a people, is a reference to
Torah.
the giving of the Torah. And that's what the sages want us tonight to be aware of, where it's a process. And the onus of responsibility is now on me. God took me out, made me Jewish. Great. What am I doing about it? It's got to start tonight. So again, what's the answer? The Mordechai asked a very powerful question on the Jerusalem Talmud. We have just answered it. His question was,
Why not 4 cups of wine?
Why don't we just have
if
an
it's these 4 expressions, you don't need 4 cups of wine.
Just
Make
add
4
on.
matzahs. We answered you do. Why?
The cup of redemption, expressions.
Cup of redemption?
The,
We're answering the Jerusalem Talmud.
right.
The Mordechai gave his own answer. We are now saying, defending, we're explaining the Jerusalem Talmud, which is this. So what's our answer now? He rejected this,
Because
basically.
These are emotions. These are more than just the dry matzah.
Where do you see that? Again, Robert, it's the 4th expression. I will take you unto me as a people. It's referring to what?
Giving the Torah.
The giving of the Torah. And therefore, now conclude the logic, and therefore the sages
What do we
had
need?
to mandate.
What do we need the first 3 expressions?
Okay, we'll get to that too, but just get the general idea. The sages had to mandate. We have to answer. We're trying to answer his question. The sages therefore mandated 4 cups of wine because.
The 4-stage process.
So have 4 matzahs, like you said. To have 4 matzahs, you'll remember the 4 expressions.
Yes, but the matzahs represent certain things, and the wine represents.
It's the wrong symbol. Why is it the wrong symbol, matzah? It can't be matzah. Why must it be wine?
Wine represents the joy of
Bec-
the marriage of God.
Right?
Giving of the
Yeah.
Torah.
Phase, the age, and the
Engagement.
Relationship.
and changes our mental.
The whole, right, exactly. So, right. Now, good. Now, why does, so the Torah only mandate matzah? Why doesn't the Torah itself mention wine? Basic answer, we said this already.
Because of the age difference? One is
What?
age, the other isn't.
So, why doesn't the Torah mandate 4 cups of wine? Why is it the sages? Why isn't it in the first place? It's a very important message. We answered this because the Torah is telling us to celebrate what actually happens tonight. The primary celebration tonight is what God has done for us. The sages are just saying, yes, and. So it's an and. This is starting a process, and they want us to be aware of it tonight. But the essential celebration is not the process, but rather
The events.
the birth, the event of the actual Exodus. And the symbol for that is not wine. The symbol for that is matzah. It's the sages whose job it is to augment and develop and explain and reveal layers, pointing us out, pointing us in direction where we need to go tonight. But it's the sages that are doing that because that's their role. But Scripture mandates what? Only matzah, because what time is it?
10 to.
Okay. Scripture mandates matzah because that is what's really happening at the Seder night. Now, okay, we're running out of time, so we'll just try quickly to look at
By the way,
this.
the fourth expression,
I want to answer your questions,
kind of
yeah.
answers what you're saying, because if you read on, it says, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So it's kind of, by knowing, it's alluding to the fact that you have to learn Torah, you're going to know who I am and what it's all about.
Right.
So it's kind of, I mean, but Sam's question still remains, so why do you need four? Why, that basically tells you,
Okay,
the,
so the
the
first
fourth one
answer-
tells you the whole story.
Yeah. So if they only added one more cup, you have to make kiddush anyway. So you're saying add one more cup. It's like it's 2 cups, and
What does that mean?
What does it mean? We're going to lose it. We're going to lose it. So you have 4 cups. It's a simple answer. 4 cups is clearly pointing to the number 4. You need a 4. But there's a deeper answer too. You understand his question and answer?
Yeah, why?
Because we're really focusing on the 4th expression.
Right.
So we don't need 4 cups. We need 1 cup. But it wouldn't say the number 4. So we wouldn't have that symbolic expression. But more than that, it's also saying at a deeper level. But first, let's pause button. So now actually we're getting a deeper insight into why 3 matzahs. In addition to the practicality of ending up with 2, is because there are 3 expressions. The first 3 are God's doing all together, which is, as we described earlier, the matzah state. Right? Yes? And the 4th one is Sinai, marriage. The first 3 are birth, 4th is Sinai. Now you're asking, it's really only the 4th one, so why are we having 3 cups when, here's the real question, the first 3 expressions are really a matzah thing, not a wine thing. I'll save you, I will redeem you. It's all God's doing. Take you as a people, and Michael points out, and you will know that I'm God your Lord. You will know, that's already Torah. But the first 3, as I just said, are 3 matzahs, yet the 4 cups of wine incorporate these 3 as well. So he answered this previously, and the answer is that all along we wanted, just a question of developing it. Even at the moment of the Exodus, when we were dry and impoverished, but the potential and the desire was always there, we're simply bringing it out. And it culminates in the 4th expression. We're not acquiring this desire, we're developing, it was always within. So just very quickly now, so it comes out that the written law mandates the matzah. It's the oral law that mandates the wine. The next verse, we're running out of time quickly, but the next verse is a verse in the book of Proverbs that talks about, as you can see in Hebrew and in English, hearken my son to the discipline of your father, do not forsake the teachings or the instructions, what does it say here, of your mother. Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al titosh Torah imecha. It's referring to the Torah. Why the double symbolism here? Mother, father, what does it mean? Rashi points out, father refers to written law, mother refers to oral law. End of Rashi. Chassidus explains why is that? Because that is precisely what written and oral law is. Father provides the sperm seed. Female receives and develops incredibly from the seed to this highly developed, sophisticated, living child. That's exactly written law, oral law. Written law, God gives. And written law is very seminal. It's also very dry. If you read the written law without commentary, it's dry like matzah. All of the nuance and all of the insight, that's the mother, that's the woman's role, that's the feminine. So the oral law is called the feminine, and the written law is the masculine. So that's the consistent, that it's the role of the oral law, the sages, the feminine, to develop the nuance and subtleties contained in potential in the written law, and therefore it's the sages that mandate wine, because wine is a sage's. The oral law is constantly expanding like good wine, older and older, it develops and deeper and deeper and deeper, and the written law is cut and dry. It's it. It's given once and that's it, like matzah. So that explains even deeper why the written law says matzah, and it's the oral law that adds what? Wine. Then we explain, again, running out of time, but just very quickly now to remind you, maybe you'll remember this, and that is, why are there three expressions of God's doing in the fourth expression that focus on the recipient? The fourth expression, v'lakachti, is the culmination of our engagement. Listen up, don't read. It's because, he's not going to get anything. It's because there are three stages of bestowal. That's the whole point here. God's doing. And the fourth is the recipient. Why are there three stages of bestowal? In order to give, pardon?
The giver must possess that.
There you go. So if I want to give you this, I have to have it. I've got to reach over and let go. That's true also, spiritual giving, whatever. All giving is three stages. That's why Gimel means to gomel, to bestow. Daled, four, means actually pour or receiver. Whether it's your hand that didn't have it, now gets it, or your mind that didn't have the idea, now gets it. So therefore the Torah, which is bestowal, from above to below, three expressions of God's doing. Because every act of bestowal, God coming down, is three stages. The desire to redeem us, the descent, the actual redemption. But the fourth focuses on us. That's again consistent with 4 cups of wine, because wine focuses not on God's role, but our role. So the symbol of the male is matzah, the symbol of the female is wine. And it's expressed in the very words, Gimel, Dalet, as I just said. Gimel means to bestow, and Dalet means to receive. Okay, friends, a summary of all we just learned
It's even reflected physically.
is, keep these pages, you can read it through, it's a summary of what we just said, yeah?
In the birth, there's 3 trimesters. There's first, second, and third trimester, and then the fourth is the actual birth.
Oh.
Also reflected.
The culmination, good point.
3 avos and 4 imot.
And that's also why it's a point, that's why there's 3 fathers and 4 mothers. Because 3 is the male bestowal thing, and 4 is the symbol of the recipient, the development. Mother, wine. So wine, mother, 4, dalet, 1. Oral law, 1 package. The other package, written law, matzah, 3, above to below, male. That's on the other side. If you were to make 2 graphs, and it's the 2 of them together that
Birth
we
of a nation.
birth that create the birth and the development of the
That's
nation.
the Torah being
Birth is the
developed.
birth,
The birth of the
and the
nation,
mother is the development, if you like. Yeah,
and receiving the Torah.
The
and
maturation.
Now we can develop
maturation.
as a people.
Yeah, birth and maturation. The symbol of the Exodus is the birth. The symbol of the giving the Torah is marriage. A quick process of 7 weeks, but that's what's going on.
Can I ask you
Or
one
bar
thing?
mitzvah. Some is called bar mitzvah. Yeah.
We're taught every day that God